Jonathan, can you help me open Unity on... Do you have the files by any chance? Testing, testing. Okay. So this is the link to the files. And if you have questions, those of you who's online can ask on Twitch chat. If you're in person though, to speed things up, save the questions until after the tutorial part is finished in the Q&A. Okay. So this is what we need, the invaders build.rar. You'll find that in the drive folder underneath Expo, I believe. It's the same one I did for the retro remake, except I've updated it so it's properly documented. And yeah, this stream recording you can also check in after your after the club night if you want to revisit some things. All right, so here's the timeline for this tutorial. That was the intro right now, and part 1 we'll just focus on importing art, 2D art, just simple focus tutorial, and then Q&A, then part 2 of animating, and then part 2 Q&A. Okay, so let's get the theory through first. This is for importing art, so let's watch this video right now. Four 22, 437.
Note that you can come back later and easily edit your sprite sheet if your animation in Unity looks a little shaky or weird, as we'll see in just a moment. So head over to File and hit 7-minute job to complete. Once you're satisfied with your sprite sheet, it's time to save it inside of your Unity project. Note that you can come back later and easily edit your sprite sheet if your animation in Unity looks a little shaky or weird, as we'll see in just a moment. So head over to File and hit Save As, and then choose a location for your saved file, which in my case will be my Unity project. Heading over to Unity, you'll see that I now have this cool looking sprite sheet, except drag and dropping this into the scene view will give us some truly horrifying results. Our sprites are blurred and compact together, which is obviously something we want to change. So I'll take a look at my import settings and start by changing the filter mode to point, no filter. This will remove all of that ugly blur. Note that you only really need to change this setting if you've created pixel art or very small sprites. Next up, I'll set my sprite mode to multiple. Hitting apply to apply all those settings, I can now, thanks to having changed my sprite mode to multiple, hop into the sprite editor and divide all these images into individual sprites. You can slice up these sprites manually by simply left clicking with your mouse and dragging, or, and this is more recommended when it comes down to sprite sheets, head over to slice and choose for slice type grid by cell size. Now all you need to do is type in a width and height value for each sliced sprite. These values are the same as for our sprite sheet, so in my case 34 pixels wide and 39 long. I can now hit slice and you'll see that the sprite editor has automatically cut up our frames into individual sprites. Super. Of course, don't forget to hit apply once you're done. Opening up my sprite sheet, I'll shift select all the sprites and drag and drop them into my scene view. Doing so will automatically create an animation, which I'll have to save somewhere in my Unity project. To view this animation, I need to open up the animation window, which you can find under the Windows menu. And hitting the play button, you can take a look at your animation. Now, chances are high your animation is way too fast. If that's the case, then all you need to do is change the sample value right here. Increasing this value will get your animation playing faster, whereas lowering this value will slow down your animation. Chances are also high your animation feels a little shaky or unappealing compared to what it was in Photoshop. The sole reason being you didn't place your sprites well enough on your sprite sheet. So remember, if that's the case, all you need to do is change stuff around in your sprite sheet and then simply save your file with Ctrl S, and all those changes will automatically be updated inside of Unity. Lastly, you may very well want some frames to last longer than others in your animation. To achieve this, simply select all keyframes coming after the frame you wish to hold for a little longer and drag them over to the right. And that will mark the end of the video. I hope
After that, we'll show our Space Invaders game, and we'll see how they animate it. So, just looking at this video. Okay, so it only has two animations, as you will have noticed. Yeah, so it's a 2-frame animation, and I don't think they have any other animations. Yeah, so we're going to do that right now in this tutorial. So to make this simple, I split this tutorial into 2 parts, one for importing art into Unity and another one for animating. So let me just go back to the slides. Okay. Alright. So this is an example of the art software that you use if you're doing art. If you're fresh to art, like say you're a programmer, and you don't know the first thing about art, you probably think, oh, Microsoft Paint is like the absolute best tool for art. But that's not true. There's 2D art tools and 3D art tools, and depending on which game you want to make, you'd probably want to look at, which one suits you. So, yeah, commonly Photoshop for 2D. That's paid though, so since you're beginning, you probably want to start with one of the free ones like GIMP, Inkscape, or basically an open source Photoshop, which is Krita. Now this one's used for anime and manga. For 3D, Blender is like the only free one, so if you're doing 3D, there's like not even another choice really, if you're just starting out. Industry uses Autodesk 3ds Max and Autodesk Maya a lot. Okay, so a little bit about the difference between these programs. So you've noticed these two, Pisco and Sprite, they are pixel art programs. And for the other 2D, it's split between raster and vector art software tools. Now, raster images are like photographs, or color value by pixel, whereas vector images are created using like math lines, so you get clean lines like in cartoons. So Inkscape for vector art, if you want to do like cartoons or flat colored images or and well, Krita focuses more on raster images. So yeah. For 3D software, there's sculpting, modeling, animation, and rigging. No, lighting. Yeah. I'm a mostly 2D game dev, so I can't say to know everything. But sculpting is for animate objects like animals or monsters. You sculpt them. For inanimate objects like buildings, you model them on 3D software. For animating, you would do some fancy stuff that I have no idea about, so I can't really say much on that. And yeah, lighting is, I guess, dependent. Oh, sorry, not lighting. Painting. That's right, painting. You have to paint textures on top of the models you make. So Substance Painter has a niche there. Okay. So let's get started with tutorial 1. So importing 2D versus 3D. For this tutorial, I'll focus just 2D because that's simpler and that's what I know. So you can see that you drag the files into Unity, change import settings. You need to slice the sprites if it's like multiple sprites in the sprite sheet, and then you put the sprite into the sprite renderer. For 3D, things change. It's a bit more complicated. You have to add different textures onto material, representing roughness, the reflection of light onto the material, and the height, stuff like that. I don't know. And then also the mesh renderer component is the 3D equivalent of the sprite renderer. And in 3D, materials affect all game objects, so you have to have a set base of materials and apply them to different game objects. Okay, now I'm going to quickly create some art in Fiscal, which is an online pixel art tool. So I'll just set this up quickly. Okay, so I'm just going to make one of these top aliens because it looks pretty simple. So I'm just gonna go on Fiscal and then just do some random scribble. I hope that's good enough. Boop. Boop. Excellent. Okay, this is my alien type. Okay, so I'll just export this image. Oops. Okay. So now that I've exported it, let's create a new, let's open up the invaders build.rar. So you have extracted it. And now click on the play scene to open up in Unity if you haven't already. you want to create a new scene main, and then you realize that the art is a bit fuzzy, because the new art, which we'll move in quickly, right here, are not imported correctly for pixel art. So I'll open up Unity right now. So this will take like 2 or 3 minutes, so bear with me. Okay, so I've opened up Unity right now. The resolution is a bit weird from this angle, but I'll make do. So if you were to click on the File Explorer and you open up the images, you'll see that it's actually pixel perfect. But in Unity, it's kind of weird. Also, I don't know. I guess there must have been some compression going on when I saved the stuff. But yeah, what you want to do is you want to drag the Unity and the art that you just made into this folder, the art folder. Okay, I'm going to create a new scene now. Alright, so drag alien and you see it's like blurry and that's not very good. So what you want to do is go into the import settings and change filter mode to point, and also you also want none for compression. This is for pixel art, but this is just to show that import settings are very important when importing any art. Okay, So yeah, that's well, that's how you import 2D art. That's basically it. Let's go back to other slides.
Sorry, I wasn't here for the last sentence. How do you extract a raw file?
You rank it. Rank it and
Oh, this is I tried to open it. I can download it. So you just extract it. Choose it as a folder.
Yeah. No. Yeah, that's the second thing. Because yeah, so I think they must have understood it really recently, which of course really screwed us over. But yeah, so for those watching the stream, and for those of you who want to watch afterwards, this just shows the 3D export into Unity process. So I chose Blender because it's the only free 3D software that's decent. So yeah. Now I have 10 minutes of Q&A before I get to the second part. So yeah, any questions? Yeah. Okay, so for the stream, yeah, so we need to add the password. I suggest you turn off the phone. Yeah. So anything that's
Oh no, it's yeah, like, oh my god.
Okay, let's get started with part 2. So I'll follow the same format. Oh, everyone? You guys in the back there? Oh, okay. Well, they're busy doing their own thing. Alright, so now let's get onto the animating. We'll use Unity's basic animation tools, and that will help us animate 2D art, or, well, anything really, simply. So we're gonna quickly create some sprites for the aliens. So I'm gonna create 1 to 4 sprites right now. Okay, well that's good enough. I'm gonna export these files now, just like I did for the first slides. Okay, so after you've moved the sprites into Unity and you've made it pixel perfect, you want to click on the sprite settings, I think right above the drop-down menu where it says advanced settings. As you see in the previous slide, right? Yeah. Yeah, so click on sprite editor right here, and then you'll be able to see the settings that I popped up earlier. To slice a sprite sheet into multiple separate slices or sprites, you can either do it automatically or you can manually do it to better suit your sprites, grid by cell count. This is an example of a sprite sheet from another game, last year's actually. And yeah. Now we watched another interesting video for making making just a run animation. We'll see just the first bit. So let's go watch that right now.
Just check out my video on the topic. However, as you can see, there's no animations. As a result, the player looks very boring. So without further ado, let's make an idle animation. This is the animation game characters play when standing still. Because obviously, even when characters stand still, they should animations. As a result, the player looks very boring. So without further ado, let's make an idle animation. This is the animation game characters play when standing still. Because obviously, even when characters stand still, they should still be moving a little bit, such as have their chest rise and fall to look like they're breathing, or have bits of clothing move slightly in the wind, or have them blink once or twice. This will make the character seem alive and not like some dead robots. So I'll open up the animation timeline by heading over to Window, Animation, and Animation again. Then I'll select the player root object and choose Create New Animation. There I'll save my idle animation inside a folder called Warrior Player. So first of all, I'll set keyframes for the body, and then move the last keyframes to about frame 20 to
The
make the idle
resolution is
loop
a
a
bit
bit
lacking.
faster than 6 again. Then I'll select the player root object and choose Create New Animation. There I'll save my idle animation inside a folder called Warrior Player. So first of all, I'll set keyframes for the body, and then move the last keyframes to about frame 20 to make the idle loop a bit faster than 60 whole frames, so 1 second. Then at about frame 10, I'll move the body of the character up a bit, and hitting play, you'll see that the character already looks more interesting, like he's breathing. Of course, it still looks very stiff, so let's add some overlapping action to this animation by adding position keyframes to the head. And then at frame 5, I'll move the head down a bit, and at 15, I'll move it up. And you can see that things look much smoother in action already. Now, of course, it's very important that in this sort of animation, things loop. In other words, the start and end of the animation must see the character with the same position, rotation, and scale. If not, there will be some ugly snapping. To make sure that the animation is indeed the same at the start and end, simply select the first keyframes, hit Ctrl C on your keyboard to copy those, and paste them with Ctrl V at the end of your animation. Awesome. Next up, I'll select the sword and shield and rotate them slightly at the middle of the animation to create some more movement. It's often a good idea to move each body part ever so slightly in an animation. This makes it feel more alive and believable. It's just more interesting than something static. And to finalize this idle animation, let's add some squash and stretch. So I'll squash the head a bit at frame 5 and stretch it just a tad at frame 15. The more squash and stretch you add, the softer and more cartoony the animation will appear. So yeah, don't add too much if you want your game to look realistic and serious. And that's about it. We have an idle animation. Now let's move on to the run animation. The player will be seeing a lot of this one. Well, whenever he moves left or right actually. So I'll create the first pose, this one featuring the character with his legs stretched apart in full swing. I'll also rotate the weapon up a bit. Now I'll copy these first keyframes and paste them at the end of the animation. I think I'll make it last no more than 20 frames. I want this animation to be fast and dynamic after all. And of course, don't worry, you can always change pretty easily the speed of your animation later on. Anyway, I'll now go to frame 10 and rotate my legs in the opposite direction. This way they appear to move back and forth like in a real run. I'll also rotate my sword down just a bit. I don't want him swinging it like crazy in this case. Same thing for the shields. Now, the animation still looks really bad. This is because we need to create the down and up poses. Basically, in a run, there's a few key poses the character goes through. The contact poses, which are the ones we just created. Then there's the down pose. This is when the character puts his weight on one leg and squashes down a bit, just to leap in the air after that with the up pose. During the up pose, the character is usually a bit higher and more stretched than during the contact pose. So with that said, I'll grab the character's body and move it down at about frame 3, and then move it up at 7. Don't exaggerate this too much or you'll get a weird jittery up and down motion. And I'll copy these keys and paste them here. And now you'll see that the run animation already looks a lot better. At this point you can add some squash and stretch to the character. For example, I'll squash the head just a bit during the down poses and stretch it a little for the up poses. And so here's my final results. Of course, this is a simple cartoony character, and creating a run animation for a more complex or realistic character will take more time and require slightly more poses, but hopefully you've understood the basics. Now, chances are high you're not too satisfied with the speed of the animation. Just remember you can drag a marquee over all your keyframes to select them, and then left click on this blue bar to squash your keys together or pull them apart. Squashing them will speed up the animation and pulling them apart will slow it down. So yeah, for a character moving at this speed, I think a run that goes like this is cool. But of course I'll probably need to adjust this a bit once the animations are tied in with what the player is doing in game. Next up we need to make a jump. So I'll create a new
So that was just for the run and idle animations. That's just the run and idle animations. So we'll just do idle animations for the alien that you quickly drew up. So it will just like squash and stretch and swap between the frames. So let's go back onto Unity. Okay, so to make Unity recognize that it's multiple sprites instead of just one, you change single to multiple, and oh, whoops, I forgot to export multiple. I only exported the one sprite long. Hold up. Okay. Okay, so yeah, change to multiple, so Unity recognizes that it's a sprite sheet. And you realize you can't actually put it in because, I don't know, I think you haven't sliced it yet, so we'll do that now. Okay, it'll be kind of hard to see this if you're watching this on stream because a new window opened. But if you follow the presentation, the slides, then it will show you what to do. No. Can someone open the door? Thanks. Oh, okay, that's a bit weird. Okay, it seems I've autofocus on Unity whenever I click the thing, so let's ignore that. Okay. Alright, so now I've got free sprites. You can put them separately, but we want just one because we're animating. We'll make it pixel perfect using the point. Oh yeah. Hi. Okay, so you need to open up two new windows, animation window and the animator window. The animator window is for managing like control of the different animations and how they interact or flow into each other. And the animation window is for creating the individual animations itself, which is what we're going to do right now. Yeah. Oh. Oh, whoops. Yeah, I'm on the wrong side. Whoops. Okay, so that's where the animation window went to. And and animate window. So if you want to make an animation for this alien, just click on the game object, and then you see that there's an animator here. Oh, or there's a lack of animator here because we haven't put in the animator component yet. So click on this create button down here, create, and you have to name it. So I'll say alien idol. And now this alien should have, yeah. So now exit, start, and idle animation, which is the only one we want. So let's change samples to like less than 10. So we could make it suitably clunky and retro looking. Alright. Set sprites. Alright, and this is how you add sprites to the game object. Of course, it's a bit different to how the video did it, but they use this record function, which lets you change like different values at once. But this one's a bit more control. So if you click on this play button, you see that it starts moving. Yeah, in a nutshell, this is how animating in Unity works. You just add on properties that you want to change, and then you go onto the dope sheet, which I'll explain later, the different values of the items that you want to change. So turn off play. Okay, let's add some squash and stretch. Great. Now that looks a bit more cartoony. Not very retro, but oh well, it's something fresh. Okay. Now to explain a bit more about this dope sheet, let's go back to the presentation slides. This is a pretty, well, it requires some thinking to get around. So I'll quickly go over the theory. Alright, so back a few slides. Yeah, so animation. Unity uses a mechanism, which it uses for animating sprites, 3D models, rigs, etc., etc. And Mecanum uses finite state machines. Those of you who've done programming would recognize this. Basically, it means you can control things in different states. So idle state, run state, and then you can define using the animator window which state goes to which and how or why it does. So this is an example from another game. Using the finite state machines, you could change between running, start running, or jumping without using any script. Without using any more script anyways. There's a little bit of script involved in this one, but it simplified the scripting significantly because you don't have to create your own finite state machines for animations. The dope sheet, which you just saw for the squash and stretch and the property changing, lets you add properties to animations, as I mentioned earlier. And this is an example of a more complex animation, a diff animation for a robot. I did this last year, and by changing the sprite and position, it flies off into the distance. Okay, so this is the steps for those on the stream. So in the animation window, changing the samples changes the max keyframes per second. Each diamond you see on the slide is a keyframe. The Unity automatically interpolates between two keyframes for you, so you don't have to do like 60 frames per second. You only do like 1 or 2 or however many. I hear that for cartoons or anime they use like 15 or something. For movies uses 24, and for like crazy intense animation you go like 60 FPS. You want to keep this value equal for all animations in the game for consistency. Okay, and these two videos, if you want to get more into making art to be like self-sufficient, or to not rely on hiring artists so much, I guess, or if you want to help out your artist and like communicate in their language, so to speak. So this one 2D for Krita, which is the open source Photoshop alternative. Krita is a bit more advanced than the other 2D software, but you can try out some of the other ones I listed earlier if you want to start somewhere simpler. For Blender though, I think there's really only one choice when it comes to beginners. Blender, and this tutorial series is highly rated. Alright, so yeah, that's the part 2 finished, and if you've got any questions you can ask now, and there's no more slides, so yay. Okay, I'll switch off stream to answer any questions. I can just drag it out. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I went to. The problem is, I went to. Yeah, that they brought So yeah, I was like, yeah, I don't do that. So he went over to study a long time. Yeah. The only problem with my stream is they wanted me to have sprites well. I taught chemistry and like early months. So
You spend so much time with things that it's a really funny that's so why
I don't think it's right.